Soundstripe.
I've got some great new ideas for using acrylic ink on a variety of different fabrics. I'm going to show you different application methods and different ways of using it. I'm also going to introduce liquid gesso to you. It's a clear product, and I use it in a much dilute solution onto fabric and combine it with the ink or let it dry for a different effect. Let's get started. There are basically three different, at least brands that I have found, and I use them interchangeably on the fabric. There's a Liquitex brand, a Daler and Rowney brand, and also an Amsterdam. Here I want to show you just how it drops down onto the fabric. I'm using unprimed art canvas, which I find to be a very versatile product. And it's been treated without the gesso, and I'll demonstrate a little bit later how it looks with the gesso. And so you can see how it just kind of splashes down and makes some interesting marks. But let's go a little further. So here I've got a spray bottle. You can't see it in the video, but I'm spraying just plain water onto it, and see how it wicks out so beautifully onto the surface, creating little sparks, little dots, and so on. And of course, it's going to do it differently on different kinds of fabric. So you'll see a little bit now. In this case, I'm spraying a blank area to show you what it looks like once I apply another color of ink. So because the ink is fairly thick, it doesn't move out into the fabric quite as much as I would expect. But when I use a wet brush and move it across the surface of the fabric, then the ink really starts to travel and migrate into different areas. I just love to look at it and see. You could also plan some applications, hills, mountains, flowers, and do that same way of working. In this case, I'm taking a candle and marking over the surface of the fabric with wax, getting my hair in the way, but it gives a slight resist, not really noticeable. If I wanted something significant, I would use maybe some melted soy wax or something else, but it does give a slight resist. And so I can then apply the ink, and in this case, it's an antelope brown, which I'm really very fond of. I think it gives that yellowy brown tinge to the fabric that I find rather appealing. Again, a wet brush across, and then again, it's moving across the surface. And this is similar to what effects you might get with diluted acrylic paint and so on, but I find the intensity of the acrylic inks to be significantly better. Let's move on to using the gesso on the fabric. I find it gives an interesting barrier, changes the tooth of the fabric, and really grabs hold of the color or medium that you're using. In this case, I dilute the gesso significantly. So remember, this is clear gesso, not white. And so my dilution is probably about 25% gesso to about 75% water. I make a batch up each time because I find if it sits more than a week or so, it will start to deteriorate and it gets kind of smelly. In this case, I'm painting over the surface, but I'm leaving some blank areas that haven't had the gesso applied. This gives an interesting texture because your ink or your whatever product you're using will absorb differently in different areas. While that gesso is still wet, I'm using some diluted acrylic ink with a little pipette across the surface. I find the pipettes give me some great control, and I can adjust the rate at which the ink is applied just by squeezing the pipette. So next I'm going to go back in with a black, again diluted, and let it swirl and mix across the surface. And I'm going with the brush just to get the movement across and allowing the colors to mix when they meet each other. I don't really have a big plan here, but I'm still kind of know what the end result will be. Now remember I mentioned earlier that this kind of process is suitable for a wide range of different fabrics. In this one, I have some interface or buckram, I think it is, that is used for tailoring. And on one side, on the left side, I've washed it with gesso and allowed it to dry. And on the right-hand side, I've got it just plain. And you can see there's a little bit of resistance on the surface that will disappear or at least get easier once I've applied the water. And then by wetting the fabric prior to adding the ink, again, there's going to be lots of movement across. And I've also diluted the ink a wee bit more with water to get more of a wash happening. So let's play with another different fabric. This is Dupioni silk. And with Dupioni, there is a strong horizontal thread line in the fabric. And I know that in previous things that I've done, that the different threads will grab the color a little bit differently. So that fabric again, with some water, it starts moving and spreading across the surface. And you can see how those different threads are grabbing and wicking the color a little differently. So let's introduce another color and see how well they play together. So again, applying the red to a moist fabric, you can see it traveling already across the surface. And then let's try adding some more water and you get lots of movement. Let's look at some possible applications. Here's some book covers. They're not finished yet, but you can see in the background how that soft, subtle color changes across the surface have inspired me for more screen printing and stenciling to use with these. So in this one, I've got a piece of fabric, it's just a plain cotton, and I've done different tests with different products to see what the effect is going to be and how each one interacts with each other on the surface. This top one is fluid acrylic with some Dynaflow in it. And I probably applied it with a light brush or a pipette, but you can see how there's a lot of wicking or shadow in there. The plain fluid acrylic works really well. There's very little of the wicking through it. The Neopaque, which is a textile paint, is also a good product. The Dynaflow and the Neopaque, again, a little bit of shadowing and that wicking effect. Although I like the Neopaque for the intensity of black, the Dynaflow full strength is really not a suitable product. I'm quite disappointed in those shadowing things that I get. Keep in mind that the fabric hasn't been pre-treated with gesso, so that is a bit of an influence on how it reacts. India ink full strength, again, it has really good intensity, and the Seta color on the bottom is another one, a little bit of wicking, but not much. So you'll find it important to do these tests to find out what the different products will do on different fabrics, and keep all of this for a reference for further work. This is one on damask linen that I really enjoyed, and another one on an old napkin. I got excited about landscapes, so I'm continuing to make some of those on canvas. See you soon.